Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Many Faces of Cancer podcast. I am your host, Melissa Grosboll, and joining me today is Kristen Baerveldt. Kristen was born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri. She's a University of Missouri graduate, and over the past 20 years, she has lived in San Francisco and San Diego, Austin, Texas, and now Parker, Colorado. She's been married to her husband, David, for 6.5 years, is a proud boy mom, and works full-time as an events director. And last but definitely not least, she's a 16-year cancer survivor who has raised more than $50,000 for various cancer nonprofits and has shared her story at more than 50 events throughout California, Texas, and Colorado. So welcome to the show, Kristen.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to have met you and get to be part of this. I'm excited.
Absolutely, me too. I'm so happy to have you on, and I will say welcome to Parker, Colorado. It's a beautiful place. We've been here for 20 plus years now.
Going on 2 for us, so we're still kind of new, but loving it though. So
awesome. And for those of you who aren't here, we're having a lovely snow day today. So actually 2 days nonstop. It has not stopped snowing yet, and I'm really ready for some sunshine again. But
yeah.
Anyway, speaking of sunshine, so let's chat a little bit. So you are a 16-year cancer survivor. So take us back 16 plus years, and where were you in your life? What were you doing? And how did all this diagnosis come about?
Yeah, so as you said, I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, but I had been living in California for a few years at that point. I was in San Diego. I was living 16 blocks from the beach. I grew up in the 80s and 90s. So back then, especially, I will say being tan was part of life. It was part of, my image, everybody's image. You looked at famous people, everybody was tan. I grew up on the golf course. So that was kind of my thing as a kid, and all through high school I played golf, and so I had an amazing golfer's tan. I almost looked like I was wearing a golf shirt just from the tan that I had. That
I remember
was really,
the days of baby oil and aluminum and, getting as much sun as possible.
accelerator lotion and just anything and everything. I was proud of my golfer's tan because that was, as an athlete, I loved sports. I loved having that identity in high school. I went to an all girls high school in St. Louis and was part of our first ever state championship team. So it was just a huge part of my life and my upbringing and what I did with my family and stuff. But it was my sophomore year of high school. I was 15 and I was getting ready. It was our first year that we got to have a dance. So I was super pumped. I had this purple sequin dress, like I was ready to go. And my mom, this is the irony of the whole thing. It'll come back full circle. But my mom offered to drive me, because I couldn't drive yet, to the tanning salon before my first dance. Knowing what I know now, I only went 2 times before the dance for like 10 minutes each. And as what became a ritual and habit of mine, which was tanning beds, I now know that wasn't going to do anything for my look at the dance, but it gave me confidence. And I started driving that summer. And I remember between golf and working and, just summer things, I would drive myself to the tanning salon. And so from about 15 on, it became less about my identity as a golfer and an athlete and more about the compliments I received when I was tan. You look so tan, you look so good, you look so skinny, like all the silly things that teenage girls say to each other. You look so healthy. I had only known how completely wrong that was. And I know that people might be watching and going like, well, I never did that. I never went tanning. Well, hold on. It doesn't mean that you're not part of this equation. So for me, that's where it really started. I also loved laying out in the sun with my friends, just getting as tan as I possibly could. And so that continued through high school, college, post-college, young professional, any event I had where I was going to be in pictures or dressed up, I'd have to go tanning. I'd have to get that healthy glow. And
this was before the days of spray tanning.
Yes, that
Yes.
actually came about kind of in the later time, closer to my diagnosis and after was when it was became really popular. But
Yes.
leading up to that, no. I mean, it was, maybe we used self tanners, but it was mostly like sunbathing and tanning beds. And I mean, I remember even in college at my sorority house, we had a balcony on our roof, and we'd go lay out there and just roast.
Mhm.
I mean, it was just, it's hard to think about now. I mean, we laugh and we're like, oh yeah, we all did that, whatever. But it is very disturbing to me now that I know the facts surrounding skin cancer and what happened to me, which was, so I was in San Diego, 16 blocks from the beach. No, I was not going to the beach every day because I was working and trying to afford living there. But it was the beach culture, and that's, everybody did that, and you were tan all year round, and there was just no questions around that. And then, so it was the summer of 2008, and the U.S. Open golf tournament was in San Diego that summer, which is always on Father's Day weekend. So my parents flew out to go with me, and we went to the tournament. And that was the year that Tiger Woods won in a sudden death playoff. It was super, super exciting. Like the whole town was just buzzing, and we're a golf family. So it was just so, so much fun. But part of the weekend was I was at my parents' hotel. I'm in their room with them. And my mom looks at me from across the room and she's like, what is that on your leg? And how long has that been there? And I was like, okay. And I like looked down. I was in shorts. It was summer, right? And I saw, my eyes went right to it. Even though I had no idea what she was talking about, my eyes went right to it. And there was just a black mole on my left calf. It was not giant and ugly and oozing and screaming at me. It was just this little circular, perfect little circle black mole. But she saw it from across the room. I swear
Wow.
it was a divine intervention that my mom was there that day and looked at it and saw it. So I was like, I
So
don't
she
know,
would have
mom.
been like, oh, look, I
Yeah,
have a freckle or something, and
and
that's
I'm
it.
and I'm covered up today, and but I'm very freckly. That's my skin. I have a lot of freckles, especially with all the sun damage. By that point,
Me
I'd
too.
had 15 solid years. I was almost 30. I was 29 at this point, June of 2008. So between the sun damage and my skin type, I was very freckly anyway. So I was just like, whatever. So she kept bugging me the whole weekend, and I remember when I took them to the airport to fly back to St. Louis, she hugged me goodbye and she looked at me. And my mom is like super chill mom, hearts and rainbows, like everything's good all the time. Like she's very rarely panicking, worrying. But she just looked at me and she's like, promise me you're going to get that checked. I want updates. And I was like, okay,
Wow.
mom, like whatever. Granted, I
Mom's
was
intuition.
29. Yeah, I've been living on my own for a long time, but I still do at 46. I still listen to my parents and value their opinions and their concerns. But I just remember that stuck with me, and she stayed on me. So that was middle of June, and I went in. So I had 30th birthday plans coming up. So I was like, yeah, I'll just, after all that, I'll do it. I didn't even have a primary care doctor at that point in San Diego. I hadn't been living there that long because I was never sick. And so I was just like, okay, I'll find somebody. So I found this guy. I was literally across the street from my apartment, made the appointment, but I had my 30th birthday celebration, like was not worried about it at all. So I went in, I think it was July 11th. It was a Friday. And I went in, saw the guy, and he kind of looked at it. And granted, he was not a dermatologist, so I have to caveat that. But he was just like, look, this isn't my specialty, but based on your skin and everything I see, like, I'm not really worried about it. And I was like, yeah, but my mom is. And he's like, okay. And he literally said, if it'll make your mom feel better, we can biopsy it. And we literally laughed. We like laughed together. I'm like, okay, do it. So he shaved it off. I mean, harmless, put a Band-Aid on me. And I literally went to happy hour. I mean, I was just like, it's Friday, like whatever, not worried about it. So a week goes by. My mom's like, have you heard anything? And I was like, no, but mom, they said no news is good news. So I haven't heard from them. Everything's probably fine. Which anybody that's ever waited on test results, like, that. They're like, oh,
Mhm.
if you don't hear from us, you're fine. Well, what's the threshold for hearing from you? So, yeah.
I want to
So
hear
it
from
was
you,
like
even if it is fine at this point.
exactly. It was like a week and a half later, I want to say. And I remember I was doing beer sales at that point. So I was out on my sales route, and my mom calls me and she's like, any word? And I was like, no, mom, I'll call them when I get home today. Like, oh my gosh, get off my back, right? So I got home that night and I pulled in my little parking spot, in my apartment. And for some reason, I was sitting in my car when I called them. And this is 2008, so I probably had a flip phone. I don't even know, but it was. But I remember I'm sitting there. It's like 4:59. I'm like, oh, they're going to close in 1 minute. I got to call them. And so the nurse answered, or the front desk lady, one of the nurses answered, and she was just like, oh, yeah, just a second. And she put me on hold. And I was like, at that point, I had been watching ER, Grey's Anatomy. Like, I know enough about, like, I've watched enough hospital shows to know that when they're like, hang on a second, and then she comes back, she goes, is there any chance you can come in tomorrow? And that's when, like, I just felt like the floor go out from under me, because at that point I knew something was wrong, because they don't ever do that. They're usually like, oh yeah, sorry, you're fine, whatever. But she's like, can you come back tomorrow? And I started like almost sweating, hyperventilating. And I just said, okay, I'm not trying to be mean, but you need to tell me what's going on, because yeah, I can come back tomorrow, but I can't wait till then. Like, I know better. Something is wrong. And then there was like this long pause. And then she's like, okay, well, I got permission to tell you on the phone. So, and so she's like, it's melanoma. And I'm like, and then it was kind of just like the walls were like closing in on me. And I think back to that moment, because I don't know if I even knew what melanoma was. Like, I do now, but obviously they had cut something off my skin. I knew it was cancer, but like that was the extent. I knew nothing else. And she was just, I don't remember really what happened other than we scheduled my appointment for the next day. So then I hung up and I just sat there and I was like, well, holy crap, what do I do now? And so I called my mom and I was like, so I, not only as a proud 29-year-old, or I guess I was 30 at that point, I had to say like, hey mom, you were right, something's wrong with me. But I had to be like, mom, I have cancer. And then she gets my dad on the phone, and it's like, and back then, I mean, we had the internet, like this isn't the Stone Ages, but it wasn't like it is now, that you didn't just like jump on your phone and start Googling. So I had to go upstairs inside, fire up my laptop, like get online. I was like, I didn't even know what to search for. My mom started calling friends and people, and it was just this sort of whirlwind of like, what the hell is happening? I called my boss, who was my age and my friend at the time, and I was just like, hey, I got something medical going on. Like, I'm not gonna be able to come to work tomorrow. And so he came and picked up my work computer for me, but I did not tell a soul anything for almost 2 years.
Wow.
And yeah, so I had like a friend or two who kind of like went with me to some appointments and stuff. But the first thing that the primary care doctor did was be like, hand me a piece of paper. I want you to go see this oncologist. And I was like, oncologist? That's a cancer doctor. Like, oh my gosh, like, what is happening? And so I went in right away to this guy, and, I was 30, young, healthy, right? I walk in this waiting room, and I mean, like, you walk in and that's like, everybody else looks sick and sad, and like you can tell that they have cancer. And I'm like, I walk in, I mean, I got looks like, what the hell is she doing here? You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't old, I wasn't sick. I just walked in with my friend and was like, I'm here for my appointment. And right next door, where you had to go get your parking validated, was the infusion room. So I had to walk in there. This is even before I knew my status or like what was going to happen to me. And there's all these people sick, like getting their, their chemo infusions and stuff. And I'm like, what is happening to me? It was just such a blurry, scary, there was so much unknown. I didn't have my family there. I had friends, but not like people, not like the type of friends I have now that I would have called right away to confide in. Like, I had nobody. And so I met with the doctor, and he's like, okay, we need to schedule you for surgery. And it was just like, so I think within the next week or so, I had an excision surgery, which anyone who's had any type of skin cancer, you're probably familiar with the term excision. But basically they cut like a football shape incision around where the mole was removed, and they take out all that surrounding tissue, because they want to make sure that they don't leave any cancer cells behind. It's just like any other, tumor removal or any other type of surgery that somebody may have. But with skin cancer, there's such microscopic, cellular level things that you can't physically see. It's not a giant tumor. At least for me, it wasn't. Melanoma can become that, but with mine, it was very surface level. So we came to find out that the biopsy most likely got all of the cancer cells. But we didn't know that until after the excision. The margins were clear on my excision tissue. They sewed me up. I had very little pain or issue. The oncologist, the one thing he said, he was this old guy. He's like, well, the good news is we didn't have to cut into your muscle. And I'm like, I guess that's a victory. Like, I mean, there's so much I didn't know. I didn't know what to ask. I didn't know what to do. I was doing all of this kind of on my own. And like I said, I had a couple of friends who were there for me, and I still value that today. But I didn't tell my other friends. I didn't tell my boss. I didn't tell anybody for like years. And really from there, I just began. I got set up with a dermatologist in San Diego, and I had to go see him every 3 months for the first, I don't know, it's at least the first year or two. And then I saw the oncologist twice a year for 5 years. Back then, that was the protocol for anybody diagnosed with melanoma, even mine, which was considered, it was called in situ, which in situ, I think might be Latin, but it means surface level. So my cancer cells were on the surface of my skin. They had not grown deeper yet. That's like the best possible scenario for any kind of skin cancer, especially melanoma. If you had to stage it, because people ask me, what stage are you? I'm like, it's like a stage 0. It's cancer, but it's stage 0 because with melanoma, the more invasive it becomes into your tissue, into your lymph nodes, potentially into other organs in your body, that's how they stage you from there. But mine, we caught it so early, which is just like, my mom knew enough. Yes. complete like God thing. Like God set my mom up to see that mole that day, to stay on me, prompt me to go get it checked. That doctor could have turned me away. This happens, y'all. This happens to people. Like, it's fine. Go home. No, like if you or someone you love is like, that isn't right, you have to advocate for yourself. Because if I had just been like, well, mom, the doctor said it was fine, and like not listened to her or not pushed him to biopsy it, I mean, this was 16 years ago, but it's very possible if I had ignored that I would not be here talking to you today. So I had the best possible scenario. If you're going to be diagnosed with cancer, there is no happy or positive way to be diagnosed. Like, hearing those words is like, it changes you forever. But knowing that, especially now, which is why I advocate so heavily, and I enjoy giving speeches, sharing my story, posting on Instagram and Facebook. Every time I get a skin check, I post, I talk about it. People are like, it's like a broken record, but I don't care, because I attribute the fact that I'm alive today to the fact that my mom knew enough about the warning signs and she pushed me to go. And so it's been 16 years, probably 40 to 50 biopsies later. I mean, that was not the first time I've been cut on to remove something. I've had so many biopsies since then. Which is, I mean, it is what it is. It's part of the deal, but I've been also very, very fortunate to only have a few that were, considered precancerous. But I've yet to, knock on wood, praise God, I've yet to be told that it has come back. But the thing with melanoma that people don't understand is, like, you don't just cut it out and you're good to go. Like, those cells can lie dormant in your body for years and just pop up anywhere, anytime they want. So I am never completely in the clear. I don't ever just completely exhale, whether it's a rogue cell from 16 years ago that's moved around my body somewhere else, or potentially, just a new site somewhere, just because of the 15 years of just massive skin damage that I did. And even just everyday skin damage, I mean, I got into running. This is well after my cancer situation, but I got into running and I was always wearing sunscreen and protecting myself. But I mean, I was out in the sun a ton, running races and training and raising money and stuff like that. And so I think people think, like, I never used tanning beds. I didn't lay out in the sun. Like, a lot of guys I know growing up didn't lay out in the sun. I mean, it was a girl thing, right? But they were outside playing sports. Like, my husband grew up surfing and playing rugby. And even though he's always apparently always been good with sunscreen, which God bless him for that, because I don't have to bug him. He's really good about that, and he gets his skin checks. But he's had two non-melanoma skin cancers since I've known him, on his head and his face, just areas that he wasn't able to protect and cover up when he was surfing and playing rugby and outside. And so it's unfortunately, skin cancer, people dismiss it like, oh, it's just skin cancer. It's one of my favorite hashtags. It's not just skin cancer, because 1 in 5 Americans will be diagnosed with it in their lifetime. And it's with melanoma, there's multiple types of skin cancer. My husband's was called basal cell, which is typically non-life threatening. It can be if it's caught too late, but melanoma is deadly. I mean, it kills 2 people every hour in the United States. So in the time that you
Wow.
and I are talking, that's 2 more people, from children, it happens to children, on up to adults that are being lost. And people just dismiss it. They take it for granted. I try not to preach, because I'm not perfect either about my skin. I mean, I try my best. I try to, we're very good about sunscreen, and with our son too, like, he knows, he always wears a hat. We always put sunscreen on him. Like, but none of us are perfect, and I'm getting exposure right now, just sitting by my snowy window, and it's just, you have to do the best you can. But when I learned the facts about it and what could have been my fate, it completely shifted my mindset of like, why am I keeping this to myself? Like, I need to talk about this. I need to tell people, like, I don't want
So
this
let's
to
talk
happen
a
to
little
other
bit.
people.
Let's talk a little bit about the facts. Like, tell me a little
Yeah.
bit about melanoma, about skin cancer.
Yeah.
You say 2 people die every hour. Like, yeah, tell me more.
It used to be 1. So unfortunately that's a stat that has recently changed it to 2. And it's when I say that, that's what people's eyes kind of like go like, oh, really? I mean, if that's not it, then just 1 in 5. So like, you're sitting in a room of people and you're like, oh, there's 10 of us here. There's at least 2 of us that are going to be diagnosed by the time we're 70. Now you think most of us are like 70, especially when I was younger, like 70 is old. Like, that's a long time from now, but it's happening younger and younger. Um, because of the damage. So like, my generation and a generation ahead of me and below me, like, we were sun worshipers, we destroyed our skin, and it was just the reality. I mean, my mom did it too. Like, she was 20 something when she had me, but they were doing it back then. They were roasting in the sun.
Oh, my
So
mom was out in the backyard every day in the sun. We moved to Florida and she was walking on the beach every single day. So yeah,
yeah. Well, and the sun's amazing. I mean, it gives our planet life, like, it's not, I used to hate the sun. I mean, when this first happened to me, I didn't want to go outside. I was paranoid.
Oh, I bet.
My friends would be like, let's go to the beach. And, I hadn't told them what was going on with me. And I would just be really snotty and crabby and be like, I don't want to go. Like, I'm not in the mood. And it was awful. It was a really dark place for me. Because I just kept it to myself, and I just like, I can handle it myself, and I don't want to tell anyone. And there wasn't, even 16 years ago, there wasn't the level of like knowledge and education that there is now. A lot of people
Mhm.
ignore it. I mean, breast cancer, colon cancer, even testicular cancer, like, there's a lot more awareness surrounding those cancers, more education. People know the basics, right? Skin cancers, like, we got to catch up. Like, we are not even close to that. I'm noticing more recently that people are like, they'll tell me like, hey, I scheduled my first, skin check. And I'm like, awesome, but I've had people after, I think I've been probably sharing on social media. So I was diagnosed in 2008. I started doing cancer events and things in 2010. So I had that 2-year block of just darkness and sadness and aloneness that is just still hurts me to think about. But then I just jumped into the cancer community. And from there is when I really started learning, not just about my own cancer, but other people's, and skin cancer as a whole. So that includes melanoma and all the other non-melanoma skin cancers, there's mostly 2 other types. There's a few other um, rare versions, but skin cancer is diagnosed more than lung cancer, breast cancer, prostate cancer, colon cancer combined. Like people don't
Wow.
understand, like the level of diagnosis just across the board is so high. Part of it I like to think is because there's more awareness and people are going and getting checked, therefore they're finding things and they're getting diagnosed. And there's that aspect, right? The numbers go
Mhm.
up with awareness because people start catching things. Ideally you'd catch it early, right? I mean, the survival rate for melanoma when caught early is exponentially high. Like I mean, but the minute it starts to become a stage 2 or stage 3, I mean, it melanoma is its ammo basically is it doesn't just it's not like it just spreads out on your skin and it becomes bigger and scarier. Like it spreads internally, it goes downward. And so typically where it first goes is to the nearby lymph nodes. That's where it likes to go first. So for
And
me,
just like
like
any
being,
cancer, it hits your lymph nodes and
yeah,
it's gone.
then it can, yeah, you're at the mercy of where it goes from there. And
Right.
so for me, because it was the inside of my left calf, they still always check the lymph nodes behind my knee and in my groin, like still now, like when I have checkups and stuff, because that's, if it were to recur in that location, that would be where it would go to first.
Mhm.
And sadly, melanoma really, really loves to set up shop in the liver, the brain, the lungs. It really can go anywhere, but I mean, it's terrifying when people hear this and they actually realize like that's what can happen. Like it's amazing what it takes for people. And I'm not trying to be, like I said, preachy or morbid but I mean, these are the facts. This is what it does. And
Mhm.
once it's there, I mean, you're just as in just as serious of a boat as a stage 3 or stage 4 lymphoma patient or a breast cancer patient or colon cancer patient. Like it's even playing field. And the thing with melanoma is there's a lot more research on it now, but it's still, again, it's not the level of other types of cancers. So there's been huge advances, and I'm in a lot of melanoma communities, especially on Facebook. And so if you're watching this and you're dealing with this, like they're out there. There's groups. Just search melanoma or melanoma awareness or melanoma survivors. Like there's groups you can join, and there's people all over the country and the world that chime in together and share their stories and help each other out. But I mean, it is so widespread, and I was so young too. I mean, I was 30, right? Like I've had a lot of life since then. And I think you don't think about cancer when you're young, like it's especially skin cancer. I mean, I have a little funny story. I remember in high school, I think I was a sophomore, which ironically is right around the time that I started really focusing on my tan. But I remember it was an English teacher, and we had just come back from spring break. And so I didn't go anywhere for spring break, but a bunch of girls had, and they were tan and they were peeling, and they'd all gone to the beach or something. And this is Missouri, so it was not beach weather at that stage in March. And she looked around, she goes, God, you girls with your tans. She's like, you're gonna get skin cancer. And I remember this girl stands, like, she didn't stand up, but she's like, yeah, but at least I'll be tan. And then she goes, yeah, but you're going to die from it. Like the teacher. I'm like, how did she know this back then? And the
Wow.
girl in my class was like, yeah, but at least I'll die tan. And everybody laughed. And I mean, I have since lost friends to this disease. My very first friend, Eric, first melanoma friend, we were each other's first melanoma friends when we met in the summer of 2012. And we were doing some young survivor stuff, and we were meeting people of all different types of cancer. But he and I were like, wait, what? You had melanoma? Me too. And at that point, he was stage 2 and going through treatment, and it was going well. And within a year of that, he was stage 4. Like it just stopped working, and he was stage 4. And we lost him a couple years ago. And it's like once you see that, and I know you've been through it too with breast cancer friends, like once you see someone, like it wakes you up. It's like, wow, like this is real. Like this could happen. This can happen to people. Cancer doesn't care how old you are. It doesn't care how healthy you were before. And he did anything and everything he possibly could. He went through absolute hell with different trials and treatments and just everything he could do to fight, because he had 2 sons. Like he wanted to stick around. And it's like when I see things like that, I'm like, part of me feels incredibly guilty because I'm like, why am I okay? Like, why am I, still here? And I didn't go through treatment. Like, why do other people have to? And then, on the other side, what Eric would always say to me is like, you have to keep this going. You have to keep talking people, telling my story, like tell them what happened to me. Like, I know what's going to happen to me, but you can spread the word. And he has his family members and friends, and he even founded a organization called Stage Free Melanoma, and they were giving free skin cancer screenings to people. I mean, he was doing everything he possibly could, knowing his fate. And so when I start to feel that guilt, I also have to remind myself that like in the, maybe 10 to 12 years, I've really been advocating and posting and sharing my story online. I don't even know how many people, I've had countless people come up to me or message me and be like, hey, I just wanted to tell you that I went and got a skin check, or, I have this mole I'm worried about. What should I do? And I'm always like, hey, I'm not a doctor, but, but I mean, I've had people who've been seeing what I share for years, and something clicks finally and they go. And so that's where I'm like, if my story can make one person change their mind about going to the tanning salon, which people still do that nowadays, or laying out in the sun, or remembering to put sunscreen on themselves or their kids or whoever it is, like getting a skin check, asking their family about their family history. I mean, from our grandparents and even parents' ages, they just dismissed this stuff. They either didn't know they had it, or they just, no one talked about it. But family history is a huge part of the equation when it comes to skin cancer and melanoma. And at the time I was diagnosed, I was the first. I always joke that I was the trendsetter in my family. I was the first one. But my sister was, I think, 26 at the time. And my mom was like, all right, Stephanie, you need to start getting skin checks. Your dad and I are going to go get our skin check. So they all started going religiously and getting skin checks very regularly. And because of that, because I started the trend and my mom pushed all of us to like get on the train, like, let's go, we're going to get skin checks now. My sisters caught at least 2 pre-melanomas, like caught them before they crossed over the threshold. My mom has had 2 early stage melanomas like I have, was able to have her excisions, and she's doing great. But like all of these things, my dad's had multiple basal cell squamous cells, which are the non-melanoma types, but they're catching them early. They're catching them before they have a chance to become something worse. And that is like, timing is everything. And I'm just so grateful that, I'm grateful that this happened to me, honestly, because I feel like it saved my family. Like it saved my mom's life and my sister's life, and potentially other people's who have heard our stories or heard my story and decided to either get that check themselves, or they've, now that I'm a mom, I love talking to moms about this stuff, because like the million things we do in our day, especially if you're a full-time working mom like me, like, I mean, we're busy, right? The last thing you want to think about is like, oh, now I got to put sunscreen on before he goes outside and plays. But like, that is just, it's a non-negotiable in my family. We make time for it because I don't want my son to face what I've faced. I don't want him to get 2 skin cancer diagnoses in 5 years, like my husband. Like it's just, people just take it for granted. They dismiss it a lot. So I get defensive about it because I now know the facts, and I've watched people suffer and die from it. And I feel like now that God put this in my path, not to kill me, but to allow me to be an advocate and to like educate people, and to just be a real life example of like, you can survive this, but here are the things you need to do in the meantime. And so, and really, I have to say another stat. I know you asked me for some facts, but for anybody that visited a tanning bed before age 35, even just once, you've increased your chance of melanoma diagnosis by 75%. So even if you're like, oh, I only did it that 1 or 2 times, in high school, or I only went a couple times, I wasn't like you, I wasn't going for 15 years. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, and also if you've had 5 sunburns in your life, you've doubled your risk for melanoma. And I don't know about you, but by the time you hit your 40s, like you've had probably more than 5 sunburns. I mean,
Or if you have
so
like very fair skin like I do.
yes, yes. And, so just educating yourself, knowing your family history, teaching your kids early. Like it doesn't have to be a burden to put on sunscreen. Like Max, my son, he just knows, like, that's just what we do. He'll be like, but the kid, we started putting a hat on him at like age 2, and now he doesn't even leave the house without his baseball cap. And it's not everything, right? But like, I just like to think about the fact that he's got years of protection on his face and head that like I didn't have as a kid. And if we can start him early and understanding the importance, he knows mama and dada go to the skin doctor. In fact, I took him in, within the last year. I actually went and had him get a skin check because he had a couple freckles already that just didn't look right to me. Like my gut was kind of like, and she was very kind, and she's like, bring him in, like we can check him out, we'll take some pictures of them and we'll monitor him and just make sure, because we have it on both sides of our family now. And so we know we have a family history. That's another luxury. Once you know that, you can be very diligent. We didn't know until I was diagnosed. So and so it's just there's blessings and curses, obviously, to cancer. Cancer is an evil thing, but like you and I talked about, like it's this club that you just kind of want to avoid. It's a secret club that like looks like those people they're really cool and they're really inspirational and they look like they're actually having fun. This is weird, but I don't want to be in that club. And then suddenly you're in it, and it's like, well, I'm here. I might as well make the most of it. And
Right.
which is what you're doing with this podcast, and getting people together to just normalize. I mean, I wish this wasn't normal. I wish this didn't even exist, but it's part of life. And like, if I can do anything, if I change one person's mind or one person's habits, or encourage them to speak up about something that doesn't seem right on their skin or anywhere else in their body, like I feel like I've done my job. You know what I mean? Like, because my mom did that for me. And so, she saved my life, and I feel like I owe it to other people, especially now being a mom, and having the chance to like relay my story to people. And, my friends who are moms will sometimes come to me and like ask me, what sunscreen do you use for Max? And what do you do? How do you do, and I love it. I bring it on. Like if I can help somebody else, with this in any way, shape, or form. I always tell people, if you need a dermatologist in St. Louis, Sacramento, San Diego, Austin, Texas, or Parker, I got you covered. Because I mean, I lived in all those places, and I would be happy to guide people to somebody, like whatever I can do. It's like we've said, I mean, it's a crappy club, but it's also like there's so much support and resources there. And so I hope one person sees or hears this and decides to make a change or do something. Skin checks, it's like a mammogram. It's once a year, and you can start as young as you need to. My son was 5 at his first skin check, but he also has 2 parents who've had skin cancer, so he's at much higher risk. And I didn't want to wait. But once you do it, it's once a year. If you're diagnosed with something, they'll monitor you even more closely, and you may go more than once a year. But it's a blessing because their eyes are on you, and they're looking at and they're noticing changes, and they're catching stuff before it becomes something big and scary. And that's the ultimate goal of like, skin cancer is going to affect most people, really. But if you can catch it early and not have to experience the full extent of what it can do, that would be the ultimate goal, right? So
Where can people find you if they want to reach out to you, if they want more information? Are you talked about being on the socials, so
yeah.
we'll put it in the show notes, but where can people reach out to you?
So I do keep my social media, like Facebook and Instagram. I keep my accounts private. I mean, people can friend request me, but I keep my accounts private just because I'm a mom, and but I do have a YouTube channel, and I'll give you that link. I'll send it over to you.
Okay,
I started,
and can
as you
people
mentioned,
email you or
yeah, I mean, I can give you my email,
Okay.
and my YouTube channel link. And again, if people find me on social media, I mean, it's not that I'm going to ignore you, but I don't have it. I don't have public accounts for very
Gotcha.
specific
Okay.
reasons, but I'm very open with my story. So I'm always happy to talk to people. And my YouTube page, I will say, is not super dense with content. It's not like your podcast where you have just, I mean, videos and videos, but I was fortunate to, back in 2012, I had been doing Relay for Life for a couple years with American Cancer Society. And I was approached by somebody there and they asked me to become a hero of hope, which is basically a survivor speaker. And I was terrified and did not do public speaking, and it was just not a thing for me, but I jumped on it, did it. It was like the best thing I could have done. And so in those years that followed is when I did all of those different speaking engagements and was asked to speak at Relay for Life events, corporate wellness events. I mean, I pretty much put myself out there. And also, if you're listening and you need someone to speak to your group, to your school, to I don't even know. Whatever it is. I mean, you're never too young to learn about this stuff. You're never too old to start taking care of your skin and getting skin checks. So, I love sharing my story, especially in person. But if it has to be on Zoom or something like this, I can do that too. We can FaceTime.
Okay.
I mean, whatever works. I do work full time, but I work from home, so I have a little bit of flexibility. I can weave things kind of around my work schedule, and I really
Okay.
so
Well,
my
we'll just have
YouTube channel
people.
has 4 or 5 or 6 videos on it of just basically me sharing my story at different events and different capacities. So if you want to learn more about my story, it's there.
Okay,
You can
great.
comment on a video. I'll see the comment. I can, I'm here. I definitely want, if you're looking for in fact, I will also give you, Melissa, I'll give you the names of a couple melanoma groups on Facebook in case there's
Great.
people that are looking for that. They can just
Okay.
search for them and join them. And there's hundreds of people in those groups that have been through every stage and story when it comes to melanoma. There's caregivers
Okay.
in those groups
Awesome.
who
Yeah, that's
need
great.
support. So,
Awesome. Yes. So
yeah.
send me all of that and I'll make sure
Okay.
that it's all in the show notes. And
Okay.
um, yeah, so thank you so much for joining me today.
Welcome.
This was such great information. I really appreciate it. Melanoma isn't something that's talked about very often, and it needs to be more so. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate your time today and all the information that you shared with everybody.
Thank you for giving me
So,
the platform. I've never
of
done
course.
anything like this before, and I just love the fact that other even other cancer survivors will be listening because unfortunately skin cancer can happen to anybody, even if you've kicked breast cancer's butt. Like this could still happen to you too. I mean, it doesn't discriminate. So I just love to get it in front of anybody and everybody. And cancer survivors tend to listen a little bit more because they know
Right.
they've been through the hell. So
Yeah.
but I'm here for you. Anybody that needs anything, let me know. And
Awesome. I appreciate that. All right.
yeah,
Well, thank you so much again.
you're
Enjoy the
welcome.
rest of your day.
Thanks.
And yeah, I appreciate everything. And go get your skin checked.
Yeah, exactly.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Take care.